Hi, it's Steve. Today we'd like to talk to you about how to diagnose an electric oven that won't heat at all. We'll discuss some of the more common parts that may cause that symptom, where they're located, and how to test them. The first step in our diagnosis will be to determine whether or not we have proper power to our range. Depending on your location, your range will either use 208 volts AC or 240 volts AC to operate. The quickest way to determine if you have proper voltage is simply turn on a surface burner. Set it to its maximum level, whether it's a coil type element or a glass top range. Allow it to stay on for a couple of moments and observe the burner to see if it comes on normally. On a coil burner, it should turn slightly orange. On a smooth top range, it should show as red. If they operate normally, you can assume that your voltage is correct and you need to move on to the next step. If those burners don't work normally, you should check your electrical panel, verify that both fuses for your range are good or that the breaker is not partially tripped. Now, some older electric ranges may have internal fuses that control the surface burners as well as the bake and broil functions. They'll often be located underneath the top cover of the console. You may also find them in behind the storage drawer on the bottom. These are typically on older ranges only. If changing the fuse or the breaker does not resolve your power issue, you'll need to consult an electrician. Now that we've verified that we have proper power to our range, the next thing we'll need to look at is the controls for the oven. On models that use a dial type oven thermostat control, that control operates both the bake element in the bottom of the oven and the broil element at the top. During the preheat portion of the cycle, both of those elements are on, so if you're not getting any heat from either of those, we should suspect that we have a problem with that control. We can access that from the back of the console and do a continuity test and also check for any visible damage to wiring from that control. For manual dial type thermostats, to access them you'll either need to remove the back panel or the console so that you can gain access to the back of that control. Now, by using the wiring diagram for your model, you'll be able to determine which of the terminals on that control you would test for the bake or broil function, and you can do that using a multimeter. On ranges that use an electronic control for the oven, it's basically the same as the dial type in that that control operates both the bake and broil elements inside of the oven. So if neither of those elements are coming on, we can suspect that the problem may lie with that electronic control. We can access the back of that control by removing the back panel on the range, and we can look for any visible damage to the board as well as any of the wiring associated with it. Now, on electronic control models, again, we'll need to remove the back panel to access that control board. First, we'll look for any visual signs of arcing or damage to the control board or to the connectors or the wiring associated with that. If there is no visible damage, we can then move on and do a voltage test from the output of that board to determine whether or not we're getting power to our elements. Now, depending on your model, some electronic control ranges use a device called a double line break relay in conjunction with both the bake and broil elements. If this item was to fail, you would have a no heat condition. Now, this may be mounted on the control board itself, or it may be mounted somewhere on the back of your range. Check it visually for any signs of arcing or corrosion or damage. If none is apparent, you can do a continuity test for the coil side of that relay. To do a live voltage test, you'd have to have power connected to your range and then measure for the output for both bake and broil elements. Now, our next step will be to check the wiring to the individual elements from the control, whether it is a manual thermostat or an electronic control. Just verify that there is no damage to that wiring from the board or control to our individual terminals on the elements, both the broil and the bake element at the bottom. If there is no apparent damage to that wiring, you could then test the individual elements, but again, in a no heat situation, it's rare to find both elements to have failed at the same time. Now, some modern ranges also will have a high limit thermostat or a thermal fuse somewhere in the circuit for the bake or broil elements. You can determine that by looking at the wiring diagram associated with your model. If you locate that device on your range, you can check that for continuity using a multimeter to determine if that is the cause of your no heat condition. Need help with anything else around your home? Search our channel for thousands of helpful videos that will walk you through your home repairs. For more information or the parts needed for these repairs, don't forget to check out partselect.com. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing.